Just know things better. People in the past.
What?
Why didn't they know things better? Like asbestos that I have to clean up. Don't put it there. Why is it my problem now?
Okay, people in the past just know things.
Just know things better.
No,
Know things that we know now, but back
you
then.
to speak proper England. People in the past just know things better.
Just know things better.
Is that a good sentence? Hi everybody and welcome to Short Fuse. I'm Duncan Roberts and I'm here with Ollie O'Donoghue. Say hi, Ollie.
Hi.
Charismatic as always. Ollie and I will take some sort of technological idea, a technology, a concept, and we will vote as to whether we are long or short on it, whether we believe in it or whether we don't. Now, I'm a bit of a tech optimist. I quite like technology. I'm a bit of a nerd, and Ollie's a bit more of an economic realist, or as he might say sometimes, a bit more of a misery guts. So we should have relatively conflicting opinions, or at least some healthy debate to be had. And at the end of that debate, we will say whether our opinions have changed, whether Ollie's managed to sway my opinion or whether I have managed to sway Ollie's. I don't really think I will ever manage to sway Ollie's opinion completely, but we'll see. So today we are going to discuss the internet, which is a pretty big topic, but there's a lot of discussion at the moment with the advent and rise of generative AI, a history of kind of pervasive bot use in kind of the public discourse about whether the internet has a future in terms of the content that's uploaded, the way it's accessed, etc. So we're here to discuss whether we're long or short on the internet. Ollie, what do you reckon?
It's it feels like it's a hard question because it's so massive, but it's actually quite easy to answer. I'm long on the internet, just to be clear. I mean, we're using the internet as we speak. So from an infrastructure point, it's going to be here to stay, right? I don't think that's going to change. There are aspects of the internet, despite all of the controversy going on right now. So that was it dead internet theory and stuff like that I fell into a bit of a rabbit hole on last night, looking up stuff for this podcast. I understand the concept behind them, but things like community, so going out and finding like a forum or something like that for people with
forums. Are you from 1997 called? They want their GeoCities back.
They still exist, buddy. They're still out there. Still forums out there for a wide range of things. And so, but like my point with that is like a big part of the internet is just communities getting together for a variety of purposes. And I don't think anything will intermediate that to any significant extent.
So,
but I think
so. The dead internet theory. Explain that a bit to me and the listeners.
So I'll explain what I know of it, but I don't. I'm sure there are books and books and books on this, and no doubt forums indeed digging into dead internet theory. But it's this, I guess, concept / conspiracy theory that the internet is now just completely overridden by bots, and actually what you're seeing is a highly curated experience designed to either get you to buy stuff or to make you, this is one of the other areas of the conspiracy theory, to make you more compliant. And there are a range of forces, dark forces at play, whether that be the big tech giants or governments or something like that. I have to say, I don't buy into it at all. I understand the logic behind it. So I think there are, automation is obviously incredibly pervasive across the internet, and you are being given a legitimately curated experience. The idea that there is someone, giant organization pulling the strings in the background, I don't buy into it at all. I've never met an organization or authority that's that organized, and I'm sure the conspiracy guys will email in and be like, that's what they want you to think. But I just can't buy it, right? I just don't
Yeah,
buy it.
no, I don't believe that conspiracy theory, but I think it's born out of an element of truth, right? So on your forums that you browse and on things like Reddit, we know that Twitter / X is kind of invaded with bots, and we know that part of that is run by governments for kind of like election interference and stuff like that. So there's an element of truth to the fact that the internet is full of bots, full of false information and misinformation designed to kind of corrupt people's views, be those political or not. But whether that's a whole kind of dark conspiracy controlled by one singular puppet master, I very much doubt. But there's a problem with the internet. And I think that with the rise of generative AI and even more convincing bots that's only going to get worse.
So you long or short? Are you long or short?
Oh, yeah.
I've said long.
Well, you're long.
Yeah. I'm long, so you have to be short. Otherwise, it's going to be really boring.
No, I'm short on the internet as it is today. I think it's going to have, and I think we also need to make a distinction between the internet and the World Wide Web, right? So the infrastructure of the internet, like you say, is required. What we're doing today, like you say, is absolutely necessary. But the consumer experience of the internet in terms of social media, in terms of web pages, in terms of interaction with other humans, I think will shift. So I'm short on that aspect of the internet.
I take your point. I mean, I think that there's an aspect to this where generative AI and well, just this kind of AI renaissance that we're having right now has caused people to scrutinize what we have now and what it will look like in the future in a little bit more detail, right? And how things like ChatGPT and Gemini and everything like that work, especially Gemini now integrated into Google and putting recommendations at the top of the page and stuff like that. And there are so many articles and videos of people like, hey, this is the death of the internet because you're not going to search stuff anymore. The reality is we've had a highly curated experience for an incredibly long period of time, So on page one of Google, like that's just not random. It's based on, well, sure.
Well, no, it's not random, of course, because you have search engine optimization, which people are kind of gaming to get their searches at the top of the page.
Exactly.
And you have sponsored ads right at the top. Like you have to scroll down a couple of sponsored links before you get to anything. I was booking a taxi the other day and I was really tired and I accidentally clicked on a sponsored link rather than the main one, and the taxi didn't turn up because it wasn't a taxi that was local to me. It was just
brilliant.
You paid for advertising, you know.
But this, and I think that's one of the biggest concerns because to me, part of this challenge, I'm trying to figure out like what does the monetization look like in the future? Because if you look at like Google's revenues,
that's the most interesting thing because it will.
What on earth was that?
That was my dog. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
I think
was that like a yawn? Was that one of those like a stretch yawn? My dogs do that, and it sounds like they're dying.
Yeah, wow, that was weird.
Yeah.
We'll leave that in just so people can say whether my dog's possessed or not.
Well, we know you're not a bot now because bot wouldn't have a dog, would it?
Yeah. But I'm not going to take your point. Like you speak about monetization, but I think it's important and I think it's interesting because the way in which the internet functions right now is built around monetization.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the way in which the internet is monetized is going to determine what it looks like in the future.
I agree, and the main reason that monetization is so important is it's an incredibly expensive piece of infrastructure, of course. So you need to generate huge amounts of money for it, and that plays into a potential challenge down the line. But I mean, what I'm trying to figure out is, and this is the aspect that I think is causing people most concern right now, is the generative AI being embedded more deeply into things like search, right? So I was using Google yesterday. And I typed in, and it gives me a curated response at the top of the page, and then good old-fashioned Google underneath. And people are really panicked by what's coming out at the top of the page. So you wrote an article, I think, on the pizza glue one.
Pizza, eating rocks, all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
eating rocks, like most of it taken from The Onion, it turns out. So one of the sources,
Reddit and The Onion, and they were kind of particular searches that would bring up that information. So it is an important point that the accuracy of those kind of generative search results is to be viewed critically, but also it's better than it appears from just those singular results.
Yeah, sure. But there's a point. So if, as people are concerned, that ultra curated search in the little box at the top of the page from generative AI is what ends up being the mainstay of search, right? And there's a lot of reasons to believe that. So the way younger generations consume information sways more towards bite-sized amounts of information. And there are many stories. I did a brief foray on TikTok and I left almost immediately because once again, and this is why I kind of think the internet's fine. You have that now, but it's a manual process, that kind of curation of information. I saw a video, which was this guy. It's one of the first and only TikTok videos I had before I went, I'm leaving this place. It's crazy. And he just said, don't buy a car because a car is a liability. You should buy a house because that's an asset. And it had just a sea of comments underneath it with people going like, yeah, that's true. Actually, I never looked at cars and houses that way before. And what it really done is just taken one simple economic concept of assets and liabilities, i.e. a house tends to increase in value, doesn't always increase in value, and a car tends to decrease in value. So one's an asset and one's a liability.
I just had that money sitting around and I was just deciding on whether to buy a car or a house.
Exactly. It didn't take into consideration that a house is often a little bit more expensive than a car, depending on the car you're going for, or what you were buying the car for in the first place. Because it's not as simple as that. So you're buying a car because you live in a rural location and are traveling into a town and would get a job, then actually it's not that much of a liability anymore. But it's an example of just how something that is true can be curated for you. And this was by a human, I assume. And everyone just goes, oh, okay then.
Yeah.
Right. So it's already happening. Now, at a different, generative AI presents it at a different scale, of course. But anyway, back to the monetization point, which I find really interesting. And this is where I think it does get dark, is if I'm not saying this is what they're doing, so don't try and sue me. This is what I would do. If I was going down that forum, I would go, Duncan Roberts Industries, you sell tractors. So for a princely sum, anytime anyone asks about tractors, I will make sure Duncan Roberts Industries is in the top 3 in my little recommendations box.
So I don't think that's dark at all, because if you think about it, there's 2 aspects to this that we have to cover straight off the bat. Which is search. Search is your primary way of accessing the World Wide Web, web pages, information on the internet. So a lot of people, most people start there. They start typing in the Google search bar, or if you're not a Google person, DuckDuckGo. And if you're from 1997 like you are, Alta Vista or Yahoo or Ask Jeeves. The information that you get in that generative search, if that's good enough for you, you're not going to go anywhere else. But in the past, you would have searched for some information and you would have had that list of Google pages and you would click. That would take you to a web page. You might go to another thing. You might go to another thing. And that's a whole kind of user journey through the internet. I did it once because I was looking to see whether a particular rule in motorsport existed. And I searched for this particular rule and it gave me a response. I was like, great, done. But in the past, I would have gone to a motorsport webpage. I might have clicked on another thing and I might have clicked on another thing. Now, all the advertising that I would have been served up through that user journey, through the internet, suddenly dried up. Now, the other aspect of this that I'm talking about is there's a lot of people, maybe not as many as it makes out on social media or the kind of the tech bubbles that we might exist in to an extent, using Gemini and ChatGPT and Claude as if they were search engines without ever going to websites. So they just go to chatgpt.com and go, what about this? And what do you think about that? And they don't get that list of search results. They're not interested in like a curated kind of list of things that they can work through. But still, that user journey has dried up. There's a number of different issues that you have around accuracy, etc., to do with that, but that's for another time. But ultimately, where we are is your journeys through the internet where you are served up advertising that you may or may not click on, but at least it's getting into your subconscious, just doesn't exist anymore. Therefore, that monetization has to go somewhere else. And the only place it can go is through that bite-sized chunk that we're talking about. Therefore,
exactly.
Duncan Roberts Industries, who sells tractors, if somebody's going, tell me about tractors, and I've paid a wedge of money to whoever's serving up that result, we'll go, okay, I'll make sure you get included in that. So I don't know whether that's the case, and I think we've seen it through the Perplexity AI, which is a generative search engine, is now serving up adverts because it needs to make money.
Exactly. So I think we agree in that case.
Yeah.
That is the natural way it'll be monetized. Now, where I think it gets dark is because it's such a small amount of information. It's like you say, you kind of scroll around, you move, you might feel more trusting of one source than another because of the nature of the content. There's all sorts of kind of little games at play. Some of them, hey, I'm paying to be top. Others, I'm just going to be the best at this. You know, my content's the best, it's the most truthful, it's the most respected. If all of that information is curated, and let's say just for fun, that the default response from one of these is 3 options, right? Yeah. Just because it's towards something small. What is the likelihood, given the amount of lost monetization that all three of those will be sponsored. I think that's quite high.
Yeah, really high, really high.
So then you have a follow-on problem now, which is a feedstock challenge, which is where most of the internet now gets nothing.
And that's the Stack Overflow issue, right? Like, or the internet in general. And this feeds into dead internet theory, which is if generative AI uses the internet and its data to train on, and that's where it gets its information that it's serving up. If nobody is then contributing to that information, where does generative AI get its data from? The answer at the moment is in synthetic data that's created by generative AI. But then you have the concept of model collapse, where because it's only using synthetic data, it starts to not provide kind of good information anymore. So that's where the collapse of the content in the internet could potentially happen, I guess.
Yeah, it creates a massive feedstock challenge, but for a lot of things. So one of the reasons we know people like to go on the internet is to consume content, not to buy things, to consume content, to read things, to understand things. Now, if that organic kind of search is still monetizable, which I suspect it will be to varying extents, but just not to the same extent, then we might be okay. But if you're a blogger, let's say, and that's your full-time job, and you're very good at blogging and covering racing rules or whatever it is that you were looking for, and you're getting, let's say, a fraction of ad revenues because most of it now is focused what's coming up in the generative AI search engine thing, right? Then you'll probably just stop writing the blog, or you can't afford to write the blog, or whatever it is, you have to get another job to make ends meet, so you blog less, whatever it is. Then people are going to come to the internet less because the reason you wanted to come to the internet was to read an interesting blog or whatever it was. That balancing act, I mean, luckily the internet is incredibly dynamic, so I've no doubt that some of these sound like massive challenges that may actually just resolve themselves over time as consumers go in different directions and choose things over others. And of course, one doesn't necessarily replace or negate the other. But even so, you have this kind of massive balancing act that needs to take place. Largely, the finger on the scale is the tech giants.
Yeah.
So now, if you look for these guys, Google being the best one, you think about how big things like Google Cloud are and their platforms and various other things are. It's a fraction of their revenues. Everything's ads. It's either YouTube ads or Google search ads or whatever. But hundreds of billions of pounds that they need to grow. And the other dynamic that's pushing it is they want to, if this is the direction of travel in terms of search, they want to be the first.
Yeah.
Google has the first mover advantage, which is why they're driving so aggressively in this direction. And all of their competitors are going, well, actually, if we can get there first, if we can become better at this than they are, then we become the new Google.
Yeah.
So there's like this arms race between the tech giants, which means that we may not necessarily end up with the internet that we all know and love today with our forums from 1997 or wherever it is, and all of that stuff. We may not because they'll choke the oxygen out of the bottom half of the internet because they're chasing in that one particular direction.
Yeah, and so you've just come around to my point of view.
I have indeed. I noticed that as I was speaking. I was like, yes, the internet's totally screwed, man.
So what does it look like in the future then? Like I think that depends on what you're trying to do. So maybe me sitting here saying most people's first interaction with the internet is through a search is outdated. Mine might be, but for younger people, it might be through TikTok. It might be through some sort of social media channel. It might be through character AI. It could be through something completely different. So maybe that entry point to that world of content changes. And maybe it's through a ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude style bot. But the way in which we access information, the way in which we start those journeys is going to change. And I think the internet will depend on what we're trying to do with it. Like you say, consumption of content is not going to go away. What that content looks like is another matter. Whether we're just viewing AI-generated videos and AI-generated pictures and AI-generated blogs, who knows? And the quality of that is subjective. But when it comes to like shopping, paying my bills, putting in, my meter readings for my gas and electricity, that's all likely, I would kind of posit, to be automated away. And the browsing experience, the shopping experience, the kind of the mundanity part of the internet where you have to kind of go about your daily life using it is going to shift quite considerably.
I think luckily though, there's like an inertia to all of this, right? I'm just desperately now trying to justify my long position so I don't lose everything. There's an inertia to this, which is people don't change as quickly as perhaps tech giants would prefer that they would change. An example of that, and we've been talking about this, Duncan, is millennials like us and will do big purchases on a desktop computer. They won't do it over their mobile phone, right? So it's a trend that the young whippersnappers are making fun of us for right now, which is they'll do everything on a mobile phone. They'll buy a car or a house or whatever it is on a mobile. They see no difference really. It's kind of a terminal to access the internet, whereas our generation are untrusting still for big purchases on their mobile phone and will want to sit at a desktop, and for some reason they feel more secure doing that. In comparison, and you touched on this, the new generation coming through use TikTok as a search engine. Right, you mentioned that. Now, I quickly looked at some stats because I'm cheating. One in 10 Gen Zers will use TikTok, not Google.
Right. Yeah.
So one in 10, which is that's their search engine, and two out of 5 Americans now use TikTok as a search engine, like alongside others like Google.
Yeah.
Right, which is quite significant given how long TikTok's been around and how kind of powerful we feel like Google is. So that new generation really are going to dictate the terms of what the new internet looks like. My hunch is old forum fuddy-duddies like me are probably just going to stick to the old internet, right? Because
I think we're sitting here saying it's going to be some kind of like dramatic shift. It's more likely to be kind of gradual change over time. I don't think it's going to be like we're going to wake up one day and Google's disappeared. But the other thing I think is worth mentioning is that there are experiments ongoing with what the future of the internet looks like. So we had Web3, right? Distributed internet, different cryptocurrencies. People wanted to change the way the internet functions through Web3. You also have Meta and the metaverse, and people experiencing digital interaction and digital services through different mediums and in a more immersive way. Whatever your kind of opinion on those things are, and I think we can discuss that in another episode. There are big tech and even kind of small startups are poking around at what that next paradigm of digital interaction is. And just the other day, I think 2 days ago, Meta unveiled their Project Orion AR glasses, right, which are unbelievably expensive. No, you can't even buy them as a consumer. There's only been 1,000 or so created. But everybody's saying, oh, this is going to replace the smartphone and it's going to change how we interact. The internet is going to be spatial based on our surroundings. So no matter what your opinion is on those particular things, big tech's going, we're trying to work out what the next big thing is. Mm-hmm. So I don't think we're going to see it stay the same for long.
I forget you've got this head short position where you're basically just betting that something will change in the future at some point.
Yeah.
You're just going to win. You're going to win this episode so much.
You're like, everything's going to stay the same. I'm like, something will change. Done.
Yeah. That's there's two personalities in a nutshell there, really.
But like, yeah, and even the AI hardware, which I think we can discuss another time as well. The Rabbit R1, which is a complete horror show. It was dreadful. But that was an AI-based device, and the Humane AI pin, which is another horror show. It didn't work at all. But Johnny Ive and Sam Altman apparently working together on an AI-based hardware project. People either want things to change or believe that there is an appetite for that change that they need to get in front of. And I think there's a question here whether consumers actually want it to change and trying to follow those consumer trends versus technology companies kind of pushing something onto consumers. So the AI hardware kind of has up till now completely failed. The metaverse has, depending on your view, completely failed. That is definitely a discussion for another time, which I'd love to get into. Web3 and cryptocurrencies and blockchain has failed, I would argue, up till now. But those are controversial points, which we'll definitely debate. You've got technology trying to push this new thing, go, do you like this? Do you like this? We're essentially being A/B tested to go, where's the future going?
Yeah.
And now we're starting to see with generative AI, and there is a pushback on it, I have to say, through the accuracy of ChatGPT, the ethics, the idea about kind of copyright and all of that. There is a pushback on it, but they're starting to see, there might be a usefulness here, and there might be a way that this is going to shift the internet. Therefore, like you say, we need to be aggressive and push ahead of it. And I think it will be interesting to see the consumer uptick in those responses. I would love to see, which I'll never see, how often now people are not clicking on Google links because the generative search is enough. And I think that will dictate, ultimately, the future of the internet.
If and again, this is just my personal reflection of using it. It's not that useful to me, and then maybe that's an age thing. But I find I just scroll straight past it now. I search and it kind of goes, "Hey, here are the 3 things you need to know," and they're almost always the 3 things that either I already know, or are just irrelevant, frankly. Yeah. So and it's new, and I don't. I'm just steering into the miserable part of the cynic part. And there is. In consumer perceptions, once you've rooted in the idea that, hey, this isn't that effective, it's really hard to be like, hey, but we've upgraded it and now it is really effective. People just immediately go, okay, I'm going to move past this. I'm going to move past this. And when you think the stat I'd be really interested in is how many more people, because the stats are a bit confusing, because there's like how many people are using ChatGPT, let's say, right? Yeah. And obviously there's that huge spike in adoption and everything, but how many people are actually using it now every day, like they were, because everyone was using it. Yeah. But like, has it petered off a bit where people are going, do you know what, actually this was fun, but I'm not really getting what I need to from this technology. Just using it now, I find it less useful than perhaps I did before. But that may be because I'm not using it correctly. But you can't expect people to use it correctly.
That's not something that you can say. And I think that that's an issue with technology in general, is you go, well, you're not adhering to my vision of how technology is going to go in the future. Well, I don't care about your vision. Like, consumerism in general doesn't care about your vision. You try things out, and whatever works.
Yeah.
I never had to say, the idea of this podcast is not saying you have to say what the future looks like. You just have to say whether you're long or short on it. So I'm still short on it, mate.
I'm still long. I'm still long. Even setting aside the infrastructure point, which I get, I think that's the right thing to do. And just looking at kind of consumer experiences of surfing the web. I'm still long for a couple of reasons. I don't think it's going to move that fast. I think you're right. So, and I mentioned it at the start. Tech giants for a long time have been trying to find their new growth engine, and that's all this really is. It's like, hey, we're massive, we're the kings of the castle right now. How do we stay the kings of the castle? Right? So that's the whole story. And how do we find our next 20%, our next 30%? But like, I just don't feel like, I think that part of the engine room, which is just like, hey, we're going to redesign the new internet and you're going to enjoy it. They actually probably have the power to do it, right? So if they in that group put their heads together and said, like, actually, we're just going to kill this part of the internet. We're all just going to do these small chats that are all heavily monetized, but just by us. Then they could, right? And eventually they'd be told off, but they could do it. They have enough power. But I don't doubt for a second that they ever would. What's slowing them down is consumer adoption, and I just can't see. I can't see that being a quick thing. No, I can't see the flip.
It's like the user experience, the user interface, isn't it? Like when Alexa and Google Assistant came out and Siri, we thought, oh, everybody's going to flip from text to voice. But people still want to do stuff over text. And the technology, frankly, wasn't quite good enough to flip completely to voice. The technology is a lot better now, but the issue of hallucinations and accuracy and the conversation around ethics has pushed consumers into kind of cautiousness, I think, and that's affected its uptake. So whether younger generations will be better, and I saw a stat, I'm not going to look it up now, but how often younger people are using something like Character AI just to chat to completely AI character, like whether it be their favorite comic book character, girlfriend, an AI girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever, is astonishing. They're doing it loads. It's not something I would do, because I wouldn't know what to say. You know,
even to an AI.
Yeah, I'd be socially awkward with an artificial intelligence kind of person as well as real people. But I don't think we can predict how that younger generation is going to push things. And I think ultimately that's what we're saying, isn't it? That big tech is trying to test out where the younger generation of consumers is pushing the future of the internet.
Yeah, I guess so. And it's just like, I mean, to me, it feels like a bit of a. I mean, your point on A/B testing is probably right. You know, they're just releasing loads and loads of different stuff. Right? Okay, well, that's stuck, right? And they have the runway where they can do that, and eventually there'll be something that sticks and does change the face of the internet and the world around us. I haven't seen it yet. I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm like bearish on generative AI, but I think there's an interesting point that you touched on, which is that sometimes if you capture everyone's attention with a good thing, an interesting thing, which is what ChatGPT did, people just like, okay, this is crazy. They start scrutinizing a lot more other stuff. Yeah. So conversations around data privacy have gone through the roof because people are just like, whoa, I didn't really think about what AI was doing, what corporations were doing with AI, because it was in the back office. I didn't really know or care. Whereas now I've seen how powerful this technology is. I'm pretty curious on what you're doing with it and how that's transforming the products that are being given, that I'm being offered and stuff.
Because I don't think we've seen the dramatic benefit that it could have for consumers and internet users or World Wide Web users as a whole yet. And it's a bit like a conversation we had in another episode. As soon as that benefit tips the scales, I don't care about my data anymore. I'm willing to give this up for the benefits that this provides me.
I agree. I think the scrutiny is good. I don't think it's always negative. I don't think it's always negative. I don't think people, but I think what it's done is it's given people an opportunity to really scrutinize like what's going on. And I can't remember if we made it on the comment we made on the last podcast or it was on a different one. But like no one ever said like to a company like, which cloud environment are you in? Because I want to know. Yeah. But it feels more likely that consumers will say like, how are you using generative AI with my data? Like, where has it been involved? Because they've played with it and they've seen it and they've used it.
We haven't even touched on like regulation and government kind of intervention here, because if we're saying that you're never going to go on a user journey on the internet anymore, and it's all going to be centralized under one company, that's going to be regulated away, immediately because it's uncompetitive. Whereas I might say you're never going to leave this one place where you kind of initiated your journey for today. I think you might be forced to, because you have to go somewhere else to do different activities for competition reasons.
I think that's a good point. I mean, I think the second that little box at the top of the web page is all that's left, right? Yeah. Let's say, and all three of the options each time are sponsored, and all of that sponsorship money goes into one company, then regulators will have an immediate problem with it, an immediate reaction to it, and it's very difficult to hide that that's what's happening as well.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Final bets. Are we staying the same? Have I convinced you that the internet might change over the course of the next millennia?
No, because so you haven't, right? And I think there's an important you haven't. I'm still long the internet, right? I'm still on the internet, right? And that's so you've got a cheeky little hedge. My hedge is just as powerful, which is I think it'll exist in some form.
I understand that, and the internet, I think, as we know today, will change. The point of the podcast, as I've mentioned before, is not to say how the internet will change. It's just whether it will or not. Anyway, I'm off to surf the information superhighway and ask Jeeves where my horse and carriage is. But thank you for listening, everybody, and we will be back soon. See you soon.
Cheerio, everyone. Bye-bye.